Welcome, kayak fishing. Well, first of all, you have to have a kayak. Now, some of you might already have one, and that's good to go, and some of you might not. And if you don't, you might want to consider a few things. Is that they make all kinds of kayaks. They make sit-ons, sit-ins, and hybrids. They make them where you can pedal them or paddle them or electric motor or all three. They come in all sizes and weights. You need to keep all that in mind when you think about picking it out. They're all good. You can catch fish with all of them. Also, you need to keep in mind how you plan to transport this kayak and how you plan to store it at the house. Now I'll try to tell you a little bit about mine. My kayak weighs 55 pounds. I can handle that, but I've added 20 pounds to it. Also, it's 11 foot long, and I have a set of wheels there that I usually set it on, and I store that in the garage. That way I can pick it up and move it around anytime I want to, or take it out and load it into the truck. And trucks are good, of course, to haul. Vans are good, SUVs. You can just about haul a kayak in anything. That's another thing, like I said, if you plan to put it on the roof, you know you don't want it to be too big unless you're a big, strong man. Now I'm going to try to, now this kayak, the features that I like, first of all, I want my kayak to run straight. When you're paddling a kayak and you start paddling it, and it starts doing all this on you when you reach down to grab your rod to make a cast, that doesn't get it. It's not any good. So it has to track well, and that's why I put a rudder on it. And the next thing you need is a place to store your fish when you catch them. So you want to make sure your kayak has enough room in it so where your cooler will sit in it, or your ice bag, whichever you plan to use. And I like a cooler because you got a place to put your rods. And it makes it easier when you're going to load and unload. You got all your rods there, and you just pick up your cooler, and you got your fish and everything in it when you go to the truck or whatever. And the next thing I want is I want a little storage, which I have here, and under here I've got some storage. Also, I want a good seat. This is a pretty good seat. They make all kinds of seats that are really good now. If you plan to 6 and 8 hours in a kayak, you want a good seat. Now, this kayak also is high. I like it to be high. That way you could sidearm underneath docks or underneath limbs or something like that. It makes a big difference. This is my tackle. I keep all my tackle in this. A nice feature about it is it slides back and forth, and it's hooked to the kayak where it won't, if you turn over, you won't lose all your stuff in it that's in it. And another important thing, of course, you got to have it rigged right. You got to have all the things that you really need set up close to you where they're all easy to get to, because you can only move so much in a kayak, no matter how stable it is. Now, another thing that I would say is, like, if I'm planning to go out and let's pretend that we're going to go fishing. When I get in my kayak, the first thing you want to do is be sure you put on your life jacket. Now, I've had this life jacket over 10 years. I finally got to use it a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure glad I had it on. And this one fits good and tight, maybe too tight. And I'm really glad it did, because I spent about 25 minutes in the water, and I was able to float and do everything I had to do and catch all my equipment. So I'm really glad I had it on. Now, let's see if we can catch a fish. Now, I like to get into this kayak this way. I grab this handle and I swing over into it. And this way I can adjust myself, and I'm pretty comfortable. And I reach back and get my rod, and I have it here. And I start paddling. Now, another thing that's very important is you want to keep your kayak stable whenever you come to a place where you want to fish. Like I'm in a creek, and it's a pretty wide creek, and you can't go to shore because there's a lot of brush hanging over and everything. Then I'll anchor out kind of in the middle or whatever, and you have to have your boat set up to where you know how to anchor it correctly. Like they make power poles that you could buy and mount in the back. You could even mount one in the front, and then they make a pole that you could manually stick it in the ground. I have one laying over there that you can stick in the ground, and you can put it inside your anchor trolley. These are your anchor trolleys. You can move, you run it through that, and you can move your anchor frontwards or backwards. See, and I have one on each side on this kayak because I always carry 2 anchors, because sometimes you get into a creek, you're pedaling along, you want to fish this creek, and I'll put the front anchor out, the current's coming this way, but the wind's whirling around and you're moving all over. So I'll take and put this other anchor out, and then I'm set, and I can fish exactly where I want to fish. Now, another thing I like to do is when I'm paddling along, if I get to a creek, it gets smaller, and then the banks start getting grassier. That's why I like this style of anchor, because when I pull over to this side, all I got to do is take it and throw it up on the sand, and in the grass, and there you are, and then you just pull over here, and then you fish this eagle, and you got your net right here if you need a net of fish. And then I have one on this other side, so if I want to fish on this side of the creek, I can go over there and do the same thing, throw my anchor out. And if you had a grab anchor, you'd have a hard time pulling it through the grass when you bring it back. So that way I'm set up on both sides. All right, so we just fished out in the middle of the creek, then we just fished on both sides. Now we worked our way out into the flats, and we worked our way out into the flats. And another feature I like is I want to be able to stand up in a kayak, and I'll try to do it today. Here's the way I normally do it, like that. And then you get your kayak, your paddle, and you can look, and you straighten out your back too, that helps a lot. And you're paddling along, and you can sightsee, and if you're really, that's a good way to explore too. You're out in the flats, the water's real shallow, maybe you've never been in that area before. This way you can really see where the oyster bars are and the different cuts through the oysters and whatever, and you know exactly where you're going and what you're doing. Now when you're paddling along, let's say you see a red and he's tailing over there, and you say, okay, there's a red right there. So you set it back down, set yourself down, you get your rod and reel, and you flip it out past that red's head a few feet and let it fall to the bottom, and you work that paddle tail back through him, and he grabs it, and off he goes. Well, in a kayak, keeping it under control is so important. And that's why, because it's like a leaf on the water. So if that fish starts taking off that way, that's good. That's deeper water over there. If you take your rod and hold it straight out like that, he'll just pull your kayak right around. And that way you can control him. And if he comes back through this way, then you're going to have to switch hands, and you're going to have to grab your paddle, and then you might have to do some of this stuff to be able to move your kayak, which he goes this way to handle your kayak, and whenever you can, you let him straighten you out again. Now, a lot of times those reds will take you through over here where there's oyster bars and the reeds and everything, where you're going to get in trouble and you're going to lose him. So I just reach down and I drop my anchor, and it holds me firm right there, boom. So then I can pull the fish out of the water, out of grass, and he comes back around again, and then I got him going again, and I'm under control. And you know what? I'm bringing him in, and you know what the good news is? My goodness, let me net that fish. So I take it and I net him, and I got him. So I put it down, I take this, I put it here, and then I say, okay, woo, this fish has got spots all over him. We got a spot tournament next week. He's got 20 spots on each side. Isn't that nice? So the first thing you want to do is you want to get your grabber, and you want to get your pliers out. And the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you grab that red real good, because you don't want to lose him. He's yay long. So you got him here. So then you take the hook out of his mouth. You got that, and you can put this back in there. Now, you don't want to lose this fish. You're not sure how long he is. Look like he might be too long, so you got to measure him. So I take this fish stringer I have here, and I'll take that, and I'll take that fish stringer, and I'll clamp it in his mouth. So now he's hooked 2 ways. All right, so then I take my fish measuring board, and I flip it out over the net. By the way, I bought one of those new yellow boards, and I like them, but I haven't adapted it yet to fit here. It's pretty long. So I lay the fish here, and I measure him, and the good news is he's 26.5 inches long, and he's got 40 spots, so that's wonderful. So I can put this back, and I take this, And I set it here, now I got the fish here, and I'm able to spin around because this kayak is stable enough that I can spin all the way around like this. And I got him in my hand, I can open my cooler. And I put him in there, I said, good boy, all right, he's in there. And I take the ice and I put on top of him, I unhook him, and I close it down, and I said, I got me a good fish. Okay, so then I just come back, I put all my gear back. Now, I got another time I use this is I got one on the other side that if I catch a fish about 18, 19 inches, not earlier in the day, and I'm going to stay in that general area, I'll put him on a stringer and put him in the water. That way maybe I can cull him and catch a bigger fish later. So I think these are very valuable. Now, also, I do have an electric trolling motor that I put on this thing sometime. I mounted it on the side, and it's been very handy. I don't use it all the time, but it's handy, especially if it's a hard day and it's real windy, super bad, you know you're going to get back home. Now, but the good thing about today is I planned today that I got the current behind me and the wind behind me going back. So I got an easy ride back, and I got a winning fish. Thank you.